Welcome everybody to our lab. We are going to be talking, I hope you enjoyed the discussion we had before. Today we're going to be talking about digital designing a sustainable future for Africa and entrepreneurship in the creative economy. And we've got some amazing people here. But first, just a quick introduction. So Africa is a continent of immense beauty, diverse cultures, and boundless talent. Holds an incredible potential for economic growth and development. Today, we're coming together to explore the role of entrepreneurship in the creative economy as a catalyst for sustainable progress. This event is not just about recognizing immense talent and creativity that Africa possesses, but also about understanding how we can harness and create a sustainable and inclusive growth in Africa. The creative economy encompassing sectors such as arts, culture, media, design, and technology has the power to transform societies and drive economic development. It's a sector that empowers individuals, promotes innovation, and fosters cultural exchange. By nurturing entrepreneurship within the creative economy, we can unlock wealth opportunities for African youth, women, and marginalized communities, fostering job creation, economic empowerment, and poverty alleviation. However, the road ahead is not without challenges, and we must address these barriers that hinder the growth and the sustainability of the creative economy in Africa. This includes limited access to finance, inadequate infrastructure, insufficient legal frameworks, and the lack of skills development. By engaging in constructive dialogue and sharing the best practices, we can identify innovative solutions and forge partnerships that will pave the way for a vibrant and sustainable future in Africa creative entrepreneurs. In this panel event, we have the privilege of hearing from a distinguished group of experts and policymakers, entrepreneurs who have made significant contributions to the creative economy in Africa. Their insights and experiences will shed light on the untapped potential of African creative industries and provide us with valuable lessons on how to foster and enable an environment for entrepreneurship. As we embark on this journey together, let us remember that our efforts are not just about economic growth, but about preserving and celebrating Africa's rich cultural heritage. By investing in the creative economy, we can empower African artists, musicians, filmmakers, designers to tell their stories, amplify their voices, and contribute to a more inclusive and sustainable future. So without ado, I'm going to get us started on our panel. We have our two panelists here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We have Siamanda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Siamanda Chege. I am the founder of Baby Ravi Collection. Our fashion social enterprise is dedicated to creating jobs for women in marginalized communities in Kenya. Our mission is to leverage the tremendous potential of sustainable fashion manufacturing in Africa to make a positive impact on both industry and the lives of the artisans. It's wonderful to be here again.
We have the amazing Tambare.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. What a great conversation it's been today. My name is Tambarai Chirumi, and I am the co-founder of a mother and daughter design collaboration called One of Each, which also has a fashion academy called the African Academy of Fashion. Our priority at the African Academy of Fashion is to train youth who are under the age of 35, predominantly women, fashion skills which bridge the gap between education and the workplace to really help young people get employed in the fashion sector, but to be paid fairly and properly. Thank you.
Wonderful. So let's just get started with some questions. So how can African governments incentivize and support research and development for digital technology specific to the creative sector? And it doesn't, I mean, we're talking mostly today about digitalization, but just in general, you know, as well, you know, how can they incentivize, you know, entrepreneurs? And also, you know, just wondering about what role can educational institutions play in equipping aspiring entrepreneurs in the creative sector with the necessary digital skills and knowledge? And do you think any policies and frameworks that are needed, especially to help enable this to happen? So I'm just going to talk to Tambari first about this, because I know you have a school and also, you know, you do have worked with the government as well. So take it away.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a very valid question. I think the very first thing I think that was even spoken about earlier on the panel was just for government and advocacy and policymakers to understand the grassroots, to understand the real experiences, which I really think a lot of the time there are many high-level policies that are put in place. There are many decisions that are made for people who are not even in those rooms where those decisions are being made for them. So I think the people in the communities need to be included in the conversation and actually be part of the advising committees to say, this is what we need and this is what we don't need. Because a lot of the time, I think governments and stakeholders of that nature can be very prescriptive and not really understand the real problems. And secondly, I think for entrepreneurs, speaking for myself as an entrepreneur, the red tape really also needs to be looked into, because I think it's such a barrier for creative entrepreneurs. Creative people are creative. They're not equipped all the time to understand these policies and these kind of things. So I think if we have maybe more entrepreneurs that serve on these committees to be able to advise of the real experiences, I think that could make a difference and that could make a change. In South Africa alone, we have a power crisis, which you might be aware of. Before we even get to access to digital, I mean, you cannot have that without power. So already that's an issue that government should look into and that kind of thing. And as much as we do have, these hubs and all of these kind of things, I really don't think that it's enough. Especially, I think there is a generation that's being left out, the older community. There's a stat that I saw that 60% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 25. But the rest of the percentage is sitting with major skills that can contribute to the economy. But a lot of the time, they are excluded in this digital training and all of this kind of thing. So I think including both generations is very important, because in that way, the skill can continue and it can carry on. And from an educational perspective, I really think that the training that needs to be implemented in terms of digital skills needs to be training that is suited to creative businesses, because I think creative businesses in the African community or on the African landscapes is growing. There's a lot of fashion designers, there are a lot of new brands that are evolving and coming about. But I think in the educational stream, the apps that are coming up need to be in the curriculum as well, so that we equip the learners to be able to work for small businesses, and that could be fast tracked. There isn't so much training that needs to be done already. So I think if education, technology, small businesses, and government can all speak together and not work in silos, I think that could make a big difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just want to bring in Amanda into the conversation. You work with artisans, and maybe not so much. You can maybe speak to if digitalization has impacted them, but also how you feel like governments and their policies can help influence, the people you work with, and the stakeholders that you have in your space.
Right. So I echo what Tambarai has said 100%. In my space, we work with a lot of artisans, and it's a lot of handwork, but I can see where it's going in the future. It's all digital. And what we are lacking in parts of where I'm coming from is funding and grants, because I feel like the government should should be so involved and have financial support for research and subsidies and to encourage like digital innovations. I also think that governments can give tax breaks, tax incentives for those who are doing research, so we can have more of this, more of the young people, or more of the artisans really wanting to go into all this, trying to figure out how really they can get into this space. In terms of education, the only thing I feel like Tambarai didn't touch on was probably maybe practical training. One of the things is like having role models, or government, and probably like this curricular in schools, like giving places or positions where our artisans can actually, or the young people can actually go and have real practice or internships or even apprenticeships. Otherwise, everything that Tamara said is all what I had in my list.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up question. Do any of you use some of the digital tools that are out there for fashion, like Clo3D, Browseware, that have zero waste? I mean, how do they fit into your training that you have for the people that you work with? So have any of you used any of those tools that are really prevalent in educational institutions here in the US, and in lots of fashion designers are being trained with digital tools, often subsidized. They have access to that because they have money in their universities or government subsidies to have a digital sort of training programs. Are any of those available for, say, your artisans, Amanda?
Well, I think that's more a Tambarai question, because
Yeah.
I work with my artisans. We all do handmade.
Yeah.
We're doing crochet. We're working with beadwork. So we really do not use. And when we do the woven product, for example, when we partner or collaborate with a designer in the US, on the woven side, everything, they give us all the work done. So basically, we're just copying a finished product. So we're not cutting patterns. We are not it's all the work is already done for us. So we don't really have that capability of the school to teach our women to cut and everything like that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so for us, we would love to be there. That's the vision. But the reality is that we don't have the funds to have that kind of equipment. The idea is that we want our learners to be at a point where they can compete with, learners who are coming from university institutions who have the resources. So I think for us that that's where we would like to be. Where we would like to find ways where, like, for instance, Amanda has talked about handcraft, handmade. I still think that there are ways for us to be able to implement technology that can work with our handcrafts people, because a lot of the work that we do with our brand side, which is one of each, is a lot of beading. It's all pretty much handwork. But I think there is room for us to be able to work in a way that digital systems are implemented some way, somehow. Because if I look at how beadwork is done in my space, like let's say on the African continent versus how it's done in India. I mean, I haven't really been or visited to see, how the working conditions and that kind of thing is. But what I see is that India is able to supply more than what we can, but I think because somehow, it's the beading is done in a very slow process. It's a lot of the elderly community that do it. It's a very indigenous practice. So I think there's also ways to say, how can we bridge the gap between craft and technology to find ways and systems or people who can implement things or apps that, because mobile is something that is very much used on the African continent. I think WhatsApp is used way more on the African continent than anywhere else in the world. So how I remember during COVID, we were predominantly making and creating things from home, but using WhatsApp as a medium of communication, WhatsApp as a medium of training. So with regards to our educational platform and our training, it's all really hands-on. But the idea is that we'd like to reach a point where we have enough resources and support to be able to implement a very fast-tracked, high-end technology program that gives our learners that competitive advantage in the African market.
Yeah, and a very good point there that you were saying, not only just funding, but that fine balance between you wanting things to be traditional and slow, but also want to be competitive as well. And there are digital looms, there are digital knitwear tools that are out there that can help speed things up a little bit, but you still want to retain the kind of craftsmanship which is known indigenously. I think a lot of the problems, and this is just in the global South in general, because we work Hecho Nosotros in Asia, Southeast Asia, and also in South America, a lot of the problem is some of these crafts are not being handed over to the next generation because of migration. So, you know, that fear of it being lost. So, you know, what do we do? Do we kind of make it so more appealing by making it, by modernizing, or do you try and find a way to kind of preserve those kind of traditional crafts? It is I don't know if there's any big real answer to that. Just, you know, we want to think that. And I think that, you know, here, Carrie Peter, she's one of our collaborators, has made that point. I can see that in there. Another thing I just wanted to touch on as well was, you know, there are digital, you know, in order to be competitive, you know, you need to kind of go outside of Africa in many ways. It's very hard for smaller brands, and sometimes it takes other people who are already in the West or have connections in the global North to kind of help those artisans come. But you know, what about, you know, people who you know, entrepreneurs in Africa that want to be on the global stage? What ways can digital platforms help them access global markets? And what strategies can be adopted to ensure fair and inclusive participation in the global markets? You know, are there any key challenges that entrepreneurs in the creative economy face when it comes to, you know, thinking about how they market themselves? You know, and that also encompasses things like intellectual property and things like that that go with that when you are marketing yourself out there. So, you know, is there a place for digitalization in terms of marketing to help, you know, smaller micro businesses in Africa that are, you know, that are creative? Either of you.
Well, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there definitely is. As we saw through COVID, and as you know, a great example of this, we work in Africa entirely, but our market is global. But we're able to reach out to a customer base in the US or in the UK because we can be able to show a case online. So there is a need and a huge possibility of this young entrepreneurs or these artisans being able to show their case, or even sell their work, or even be able to collaborate like we do with in the global market. But there is a need for governments and for the sectors that can help improve on all the digital, because that's the only platform that they can use. It's very hard to break into these markets if you're not able to have access to the internet. If you have no access to electricity, if you have no access to the internet, if you don't have the knowledge to how to use the internet, you don't have to, you know, or how to basically how to operate any digital platforms, then it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to literally get out of your little town or little village, and that isn't definitely just continues the cycle of poverty. And I think there is a great need for that. There is a great potential for major breakthrough if we are the artisans, especially in Africa, and the entrepreneurs have access fully to digital marketing and all the digital platforms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tamberi?
And I think also sometimes from a competitive place to say, how do we compete on a global platform? If we're looking at like, you know, micro entrepreneurs or grassroots level entrepreneurs, I'm not talking about the established brands we have in Africa, because we do have a lot of those who do have digital access and all that. We're talking about, you know, the rural communities and that kind of thing, who there's a lot of potential there where they have beautiful products. But if we can give an example, for instance, of a photograph of a beaded necklace that's been taken by a Samsung from, I don't know, 2010 versus a beaded necklace that's got 3 strings of beads taken by an iPhone, whatever. Probably that beaded piece that was made by someone in the rural community holds really great value, but because of the fact that her device is not able to take the same kind of picture that somebody with an iPhone does already sets her, like somebody would offer her way less than what they would offer the person with taking the image with an iPhone. So I think there is a gap in terms of people telling their own stories, who are the makers, who can get access to the right resources and the right tools that can elevate them to be able to be seen properly on the global platform. Right. And I think technology is also always evolving really quickly and really fast. So I think training and whatever methods that are implemented to share with those people and those communities need to be constantly updated to say, when we are teaching people digital things, what are we teaching them the new things? What are the basics? How can it be differentiated? Because it can also be overwhelming and very confusing. But I think it's important to set people up for success and not set people up for failure.
Yeah, I totally agree. We had worked in Nigeria with a brand, and were able to help them with their storytelling and their digital profile, out there globally, with one of our incubators. And I think that, just getting the training and understanding what is needed if you as a smaller micro brand that's out there, the tools that are available, that are some of them free, that you can use, was just so helpful in helping that brand, gain more awareness in the public eye globally, help them with trade shows. So yeah, significantly, like you said, just that training is needed. It always comes back to education with me, just giving people that ability to have access to tools and trainings. So another thing I just wanted to do was to just open up a little bit of questions. I know we have a couple of people from South Africa here on the call. Anybody have any questions they would like to ask, or remarks or comments? I know we have Carrie. I'm not sure if she's still there.
I'm still here.
Okay, yeah. Do you want to add any comments? I mean, you are from another part of the continent.
Yeah, well, I'm currently in another part of the continent.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm joining you guys from Nairobi today, but I'm South African, born and bred. Sorry, I haven't put my camera on. Let me actually put my camera on. I am using my cell phone simply because this is not going to work. Here we go. Sorry about that. So I'm joining you guys, from Nairobi, actually on digitization work myself. But I did have some comments. Africa is the most beautiful melting pot. We have such incredible challenges when it comes to digital access, but when Africans get digital access, they gain digital skills so rapidly that they become incredibly digitally fluent, and then, to be dead honest, quite what shall I say, quite demanding in terms of their customer experience, which is, I think, quite spectacular. I put a comment in the chat saying that most of the small or the micro entrepreneurs that I know in the fashion industry have managed to gain incredible success with nothing more than an Instagram profile and a WhatsApp. And that is, we don't always need to look at such incredibly high level access to fancy to hugely enabling tools. Sometimes it really is as simple as the ability to honestly have a website with two simple social media tools. And there's a very interesting reseller business, which is quite cool. If you think about trying to resell secondhand clothing and give clothing a second life, there's very interesting reselling business frameworks that have developed that I noticed. And then there's all the beautiful handwork stuff. And these entrepreneurs are able to hire people. You can see that they've got people joining their teams. They're able to create economic growth for other people through these platforms. But I think that an important consideration for Africa in the next couple of years is actually going to be what a lot of people believe is the next greatest asset or the next greatest resource to come out of Africa, and that's our people.
Yeah,
The
well,
human capital that Africa
yeah.
contains. And how we're going to both capacitate from a digital standpoint, but also protect, to ensure that when Africans enter this environment, they aren't subject to the same issues that we see coming out of Southeast Asia. And then one last thing that I would like to ask regulators for, or the circular economy for, is given what I've just explained about digital access and how a little bit goes a long way, is when we look at recycling, I think that we should pilot initiatives in the first world that ask for recycled hardware. So instead of crushing all the phones and laptops, perhaps they can be repurposed for people who can use that cell phone to start a business. That's just one of the things I want to ask about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, that is one of the things I think the UN have been working on around, that digital hardware, how to repurpose. That would be something that would be great. I think that there's a lot of attention turned to Africa at the moment, as in terms of fashion and creativity, and it's just capitalizing on that moment that there is there. I think that I still feel like sometimes it's a lot of hype with not a lot of funding to back it up. As me and Tamburi had talked about funding, she's had to come over here to get people interested in funding. It's not a case of people going over to Africa looking for brands, looking to help. And so for me, sort of well aware of all of the things that need to be done. I think my priority, I think, would be one, education, and two, getting them access to people who can help them scale, give them training, help people scale. And in order to have something, even a program that you're suggesting, there still needs to be some incentive from the government, because there's not enough money in the communities that would benefit from that. They don't have the money or the funds to start that kind of recycling hardware business. Yeah, so I think that, yeah, we just, a lot of the time, sometimes it's frustrating for me because I feel like we go in circles, like we have all of these ideas, but then the people, the decision makers around funding are never in the right place. And I wonder, how can we get them in the right place? How can we get them in the right place? With forums like this, where we see brands like yours, Tamburi, and yours, Siamanda, are good, are good, but to me it feels like there should be some sort of collective. I know there's an African Fashion Week in London, but maybe something that's some sort of forum that highlights some of the different areas of Africa. I don't think you can put it all together, it's way too big, but the different regions of Africa where they get a say. So many times I see brands over here, but behind them is sort of somebody else. It's not the village. And so it would be good to see more of the funding coming out of Africa, more of the understanding. When I spoke to the Ghana Board of Fashion, a lot of them said, well, the government doesn't even take an industry like fashion very seriously. They didn't even have a fashion course until recently. It's just been very, very hard. So there's a lot of barriers to entry, for brands. But I feel like it's not all lost. There are ways. I just think that it's a case of these bigger companies just having awareness of when they're putting out these impact funds, understanding that there are brands out there, there are places and regions where they're needed. One last thing I just wanted to ask was the Sustainable Development Goals, poverty eradication, gender equality, environmental sustainability. Those are all kind of key things that we talk about in the Global South. Any way you think that digitalization can help with that? And we're going to leave it at that. Anybody want to say some last words on that? Because even I have to go.
I'm going to say it real quick. Definitely job creation, poverty eradication because of job creation, gender equality because the platform allows no discrimination as a woman, regardless, or as a man. You can do it. You both could use the platform equally. And then I'm also thinking environmental sustainability because of the reduced carbon footprint.
Okay, thank you. And Tambari?
I totally add to the same. I think, access to education is very important. Like you said, nobody can take away the knowledge that you have. But I think different levels of education, not everybody needs a university degree. I think let's let that be a reality, that can sort of, help with, the gender divide, the bridge between what do you call it, like the socio-economic problems that we have, which ultimately has the ability to change things or contribute to that change at least.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I know that we are, I'm at time with this. So you can, some of you I know have to leave. If you're heading to the main room, you can leave this and head to the main room where there's probably a discussion. CJ, I won't be in the main room. So if Adriana, you can maybe just summarize a little bit about what we talked about in here if you're going to be there. And thank you again to our guests for staying. I know it was long, there were some incredible conversations, but just wanting to, we're going to be recording this and have that out for everybody to see on the UN platform. So thank you again for everyone for being here. And like I said, you can leave this room and go to the main room where they're just finishing off discussions and we'll have conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye.